How should you respond to your kiddo if you're getting frequent requests for desserts or sweets, or if your child is wanting more of a particular dessert? I know these are common questions that a lot of parents have, and you're not alone if you find yourself in this boat. I think these are great questions because how we talk to our kids about food really matters. Our language around food, especially sweets in particular, because it tends to be more of an emotionally charged topic in food. I think the language that we use can really be a vehicle for shaping the way our child might feel about food and their bodies. So this is really a great opportunity to be proactive in using language that can help our child or our children cultivate a positive relationship with food and their own bodies. So let's talk about this because I know that it's really common right now, especially with kids home more frequently and during the summer, where your kid might be excited about a particular sweet or dessert, or you might be having some kind of dessert with your meal or after your meal, and your child may be wanting more. And I think sometimes as parents, we might just want to get our child to stop asking repetitive questions. And, the tendency may be to try to shut them down or deter them or distract them from what they're asking for. And for a lot of parents, I think sometimes dessert and the territory of sugar can be an uncomfortable place to deal with kids. And so sometimes I think some of those feelings of not being sure how to handle those situations when they do come up with kids can really kind of put parents in a bind of how do I respond to this? How do I respond to my child? And so I just want to give you 3 things to consider or think about as you're navigating how to approach this with your child, and remembering that your language really does matter, and how you talk to your child about desserts and sweets does matter. And so I want to give you 3 tools. First thing is to make sure to look at the big picture and address any underlying issues that may be fueling your child's frequent requests for dessert or sweets or whatever it might be. So what I tend to see is sometimes kids who aren't getting enough exposure or aren't having enough access to desserts or sweets sometimes get preoccupied with it, and they might kind of seem a little obsessive about it. And sometimes we see that in how they talk about it. If they're talking about it frequently, if they're asking about it frequently, if they know that there's a certain cookie or candy in the house and they're not really getting access to it, that might be on the forefront of their mind, and that could be something that's fueling their frequent requests for dessert or sweets. So it's really important to take a step back and ask yourself, is my child, getting enough access to this sweet? And it doesn't mean giving it to them like in that moment that they're asking for it, but it's simply a clue, like picking up on the clues that your child is giving you to understand how you can help support their relationship with food. So if it's something that you notice, like your child is incessantly asking about a certain dessert or sweet that you might have in the house, take a look at that and take a look at the big picture and the big context of what's happening, because that may be a clue that your child might need more exposure to that in order to not feel, as preoccupied or obsessive with it. So, that brings me to point number 2, which is leading with a yes when you're talking to your child or responding to their requests for dessert or sweets. So I think the tendency when we get these requests for our kids is to just want to kind of shut them down or stop them from asking the question repetitively. But you have to remember, when it comes to food, when a child hears no frequently, that actually makes them more preoccupied with it. And when they do finally get an opportunity to have it, they can kind of go overboard with it. It becomes really, really special in their mind because they've just heard no, 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 no all the time. And so again, this doesn't mean we give our child what they want in the moment that they want it every single time. But what I'm trying to suggest here is leading with a yes. So, if your child is saying, I want more candy, and instead of saying, no, you can't have that, you've already had too much candy, or this isn't good for you, things like that, that kind of language can in turn make a child feel shame or guilt around that food. So what I suggest is instead leading with a yes. So you're acknowledging their like of that food or their want to eat that food, but you're not necessarily, giving into that request. So for example, you might say, I know that you really love that candy. It's so yummy. We're going to have more of that candy with dinner tonight. You can pick out a piece of that candy to eat with your dinner tonight. So in effect, you're saying yes to them, but not like giving in to them and what they want in that moment. So I hope that kind of makes sense. The third point here is to make sure you talk to your kids in terms of events rather than time. So what I mean by this is sometimes we'll tell our kids things like, you can have that later, or you can have that, tomorrow, whatever. And we have to remember that kids process time differently, and sometimes those timelines that we give them can feel really arbitrary. So instead, I suggest to kind of describe things in terms of events to your child. So this can kind of help quell any anxiety that they might be feeling about getting to have a particular sweet or dessert that they're really excited about. So instead of saying, you can have that later, or we're going to have that later, maybe you can say something like, after nap time, or after we get back from the library, we're going to have a snack, and we can have some cookies and milk with our snack. So when they hear it in the context of events that are happening during their day versus like our, arbitrary time, it helps them. It can kind of put them at ease a little bit, so they're not like repeatedly asking you the same question about when they get to have a dessert that they're really excited about. So I hope these 3 tips, just help you a little bit as you're approaching this and navigating this with your own child. I have a blog post for you that's linked in the comments. So if you need more help around this topic, or you're just looking for like specific phrases or examples of phrases that you can actually share or use to respond to your child when they're asking for more desserts, please check out the blog. There's more info there for you. And I hope this was helpful. Feel free to leave any questions or comments below, and know that you're doing a great job. This isn't easy, but hopefully this is helpful for you. All right, take care.